This week in our single stock focus, we're talking Greenlane Holdings with Cornerstone Investments. Cornerstone Investments begins here. Greenlane has been hit hard by the vaping crisis and subsequent crackdown by the government on Juul and other vaping companies. Its stock was one of the worst performers among cannabis companies. However, the business has been undergoing a transformation to wean itself off of nicotine products and focus on the fast-growing cannabis industry. Cornerstone Investments then goes on. Greenlane has struggled in the last 2 years as its vaping business suffered setbacks. The business has stabilized in the last year, but growth remains weak, as demonstrated by the lack of growth in Q4. Profitability remains weak as EBITDA was negative $7 million last quarter. Full year 2020 sales of $138 million declined 25% from 2019, mainly driven by the loss of nicotine sales, primarily Juul and Pax vaping products. Cornerstone Investments continues. Greenlane and KushCo announced the 50-50 merger on March 31st to create the leading publicly traded supplier to the cannabis industry. Both Greenlane and KushCo have struggled in the last couple of years as vaping sales declined while cannabis revenue only grew slowly. The combination makes strategic sense because of the complementary product portfolio and customer base. Both companies now focus on cannabis, but Greenlane is primarily a B2C business, while KushCo focuses on B2B. The combined company will generate about 2/3 of sales from vape and the rest from packaging and supplies, consumer goods, and other services. Cornerstone Investments concludes with this. We think Greenlane's merger with KushCo is a logical move to consolidate within the cannabis supplier chain and reach for scale and cost savings. Both companies suffered major setbacks during 2019 after the vaping crisis, but have since stabilized. Going forward, we expect sales to start growing, driven by growth from cannabis sales. Greenlane closed the week at just over $6. That concludes this week's Stocks to Watch. Thank you for listening. For the best investment analysis and news on the web, go to seekingalpha.com. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also sign up for our other podcasts, Alpha Trader, the Cannabis Investing Podcast, Let's Talk ETFs, and Marketplace Roundtable Podcast on those platforms as well. Have a great week.